Hello, today's Bible study comes from the book of Philippians, the third chapter, the 10th through the 11th verse, and it reads as follows. I want to know Christ, yes, to know the power of his resurrection and participation in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, and so somehow attaining to the resurrection from the dead. Ooh. And Paul is in the process, and he's talking about how he wants to know Jesus. And he says that I may know him. And this is just Paul telling you how he feels. I want to know Christ. And these legalists that he was talking to and presenting this to in this letter, um, he's saying Jesus Christ is my main goal. And I can do things and find peace with God. In other words, Paul was saying, I submit it's about Jesus. It is not about me. And he goes on to say that in the power of his resurrection, see, the power of his resurrection and this resurrection, there was power in it. And Paul is saying, knowing Jesus is knowing his resurrection and this power. Um, he's saying, hey, it is in us now. Not when we die. This resurrection power is right here. This power is in us right now. Not when we leave here. He wants us to understand what the resurrection did for us, how powerful Christ was when this occurred. So he's saying experience his power, feel his power. Okay? Overcoming everything. And that meant sin, death, and all of it. Excuse me for yawning. And then he says, in the fellowship of his suffering. In short, if you're going to be like Christ, you got to suffer like Christ. We used to say, I want to be like Mike. Well, in order to be like Mike, you had to do what Mike did. Um, and Mike just played basketball. If you want to be like Christ, you got to know him. And you have to have fellowship with his suffering. And when you follow Jesus, we know that this suffering is a part of who we are. We can't get past the suffering if we don't follow Christ. As we find out in his suffering, we become heirs. So we must suffer. And being comforted to his death. That just tells you now, because Paul is giving you some things to think about, and he's bringing it back to our attention that in his death, if you're going to be like Christ, you got to be in his death. And remember, Paul had told us earlier, if he lived or he died, didn't bother him. If by any means I may attain to the resurrection from the dead, Paul was just saying, hey, there were benefits, or there was a goal with Jesus in the resurrection. And it was the change of your life now and then to be truly resurrected. And don't forget, revive is not resurrected. Resurrected is a new body. And Paul didn't doubt this. Paul was saved. He didn't have any doubts. But Paul's thing was he wanted to be with Christ. He wanted to see Christ. Paul wanted the totality of what he did to be with Christ. And he was telling you, I want the salvation. I want the resurrection. I want the ability to be with Christ. Amen.